right, so I guess just this is kind of a thing in Europe, and also it's starting to be bigger in the US, just the GMO organic argument. And it's really, there's not a huge body of scientific evidence that GMOs are necessarily less healthy, but people just don't like the idea of consuming something that they don't consider natural. So a lot of like more developed countries, like Western Europe, they're starting to like push back against like food that's genetically engineered. They just want organic food, and yeah, it's not so much that it's like necessarily unhealthy for you. It's obviously, I doubt that it's as healthy as eating organic food. But it's mostly just because people like the idea of having something more that they think is more natural. So that's kind of the situation with agriculture in Europe. And it can't be perfect. It's also kind of a socioeconomic thing because, it's not something that like less developed countries can afford. Like they just need food because they have such a large amount of people. So it's really just a luxury that like more affluent people can afford.
Okay. All righty. So we're going to go to Asia. Okay. All right. So population-wise, we know that China right now is the largest country with 1.4 billion, and they're mostly in the east. They would all love to be in the east, but since it's a communist country, they actually control the flow of people going there. Remember, this is desert out here. All right, India is going to pass them up. All right, you guys like to talk about the one-child policy where they murdered all of the babies. Yes, that happened, but it was rare. And it was more like a sex-selective abortion. In rural areas, there were stories about infanticide, where people would have a female baby and they'd throw it away. Did happen, but it was not that widespread. But in that 20-something age group, you've got 24 more million boys than girls. So you can see that it was happening. India is trying to ad campaign. They love movies more than we do. So all of their Bollywood, Mumbai used to be called Bombay, and this is where their Hollywood is, so it's called Bollywood. They have these huge ad campaigns about 2 kids are cool. So they're trying to change the mentality. All right. Very largely populated. This is actually the largest Muslim country in the world population-wise. All right, that's kind of cool. Central Asia, not as populated because it's just a drier region. And then Southwest Asia, not as populated because it's a drier region. Less water, less people. All right. We talk about Japan being an aging population because of their fear of outsiders. And since they're so educated, they're just not having a lot of kids. Women don't even start looking for husbands in Japan. It's customary until 30 now. Same thing's happening in South Korea. Okay. Anything on population here?
No.
Okay. All right. Okay. Immigration? Jump in.
I guess population. I am going back to that. Just remember, Russia physically the largest state in the world, but remember most of their population is in the west. Warm water ports over there. They're closer to Europe. They supply Europe with gas, right? Natural gas, so that Europe can warm their homes. Just thinking also about development. Talking like level 4 development here, level 4 development here. Here we're getting, 1 or 2 in North Korea, a lot less developed. China on the sides, and I know they may not be asking you economic questions, but you can always bring up that knowledge in your answer. Okay, so we talked about over here, Guangzhou. We've talked about Shenzhen and different places that they have just developed in China, and so this area highly developed. But as you go inland, you're going to find a lot more farmers, a lot more people who are subsistence agriculturalists and things like that. Let's see, where are we at? Migration?
Yeah, but before you do that, make a distinction between.
You do it.
Okay. Well, Mr. Hellstrom keeps bringing up level 4, and that's in the Rostow's development because in the population diagram, the
Demographic transition.
demographic transition, it was 1, 2, 3, 4. But in the Rostows, remember they added that entrepreneur thing, but that's why it got to, 2 was the entrepreneur, then 3, 4, 5. All right, so that's the distinction.
So, and you can correct me on camera if I'm
Okay.
wrong, but don't they sort of overlap? So like level 4 countries, you're gonna find older populations, right? And it's gonna be,
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
in demographic transition, this is level 4.
right.
But in Rostow,
So you think it's
a
level 5?
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
So, but just so you just understand the basic concept of that,
Yeah,
you'll be 5. But it's probably going to be more demographic transition.
okay.
Okay.
Yeah, and then just migration, I was thinking about the Rohingya down here who are Muslims being persecuted by Myanmar, and it's genocide down there. What's happening is awful. You might get a Uyghur or Uyghur question about the Muslims who are here in China also being persecuted for their religion. I'm not sure if they're going to go there with that information. It's pretty current, but
Myanmar would be a cool question because they're a Buddhist country. They're Burmese. That's the majority. And whenever you got problems, you blame someone else. So the British had brought in Rohingyas as laborers back in the 1800s. All right, and so the Burmese, the Buddhist Burmese, have been killing the Muslim Rohingyas. Now the Rakhine's, they actually have their own states, and they're Muslim, and they're actually fighting back because they have a bigger number. And they've got this really cool, good-looking leader right now. So he's kind of like their George Washington. But there's an example of majority group persecuting the minority group because that's who you blame when things are going bad.
You could talk about, this isn't anymore, but like when before India separated,
oh, yeah.
just like the conflict between Hindus and Muslims, and like Indira Gandhi's assassination.
Okay.
And stuff like that.
Yeah, this was all India before, and then when the British left, the Pakistanis or the Muslims were saying, we're screwed. We're always going to be the minority. You have a holiday every year where you kill Muslims. We want to have our own country, and it started out as West Pakistan and East Pakistan in 48, 49, but then they in 1971 changed over to Bangladesh. Okay. Do we want to go to immigration?
Tell me a little bit about Saudi Arabia versus Yemen. I was just thinking about development again, and again, it may not be a development thing, but remember, very, very wealthy, especially in the capital, fairly wealthy in terms of location and that kind of thing. And then Afghanistan and then areas of Pakistan up here is going to be less developed.
And it's weather and resources.
Yeah.
Even though it's incredibly dry here, they got the oil. All right. Iran, they're realizing that we're going to run out of oil, so they're trying to go nuclear, and we're all trying to stop them because we're afraid they're going to make nuclear bombs. Now,
Check the time. Go ahead.
good. Okay, we're going to go to immigration.
We're good.
Okay.
8 minutes.
Okay, so here in California, early on, we saw migrants from China, and we thought everybody was Cantonese because they were coming from a very small area. We're actually learned that they're Han and they speak Mandarin, but we were getting the people from Canton. They came and they were the gold miners, and they did a lot of work here. People were coming from Japan early on in the 1800s to California. Then we start seeing people coming from the Philippines. But then we shut it all down with anti-immigration legislation in the 1880s. All right, so that really shut off. Our immigration now, what we're seeing is that really top tiny sliver of 1%. You guys think that all Asians are smart? Well, no, we're getting that top tier where most of us came, our ancestors were farmers. We worked with our backs. The ones we're getting right now, the software engineers from India and China, we're like, dang, these people are smart. But that's why. They've got an intervening obstacle, an ocean that separates us. They've got an intervening obstacle, which is politics. We have quotas on how many people can get in on visas. All right. Anything about US here before I go to Europe? Okay. All right. Indonesia is a former Dutch colony. So you see people from Indonesia going to Holland, British colony, people from Hong Kong, that was a British colony. You'll see them in England. All right, and then we just talk about the Treaty of Versailles, how this was all carved up linguistically. You know, the young guys that were given the maps, they said make new countries, and they did the best they could. But like Iraq is a situation where you've got Kurds in the north, you've got Sunni Arabs in the middle, and then you've got Shia Arabs in the south, all right, and they want to be part of Iran. I don't think that they're Persian. I could be wrong, but I just know religiously that they're Shia and they want to be part of Shia Iran. People in Iran are Persian, they're Arab, they speak Farsi, they speak Arabic, okay? And so, this is what's interesting is people, we talked about who would migrate into India, and I found out it was the Hindus in Sri Lanka because they're a minority. You've got Hindus over here that are minority, they're coming into work. But you see that, but we see people going from Pakistan, areas over here to Saudi Arabia, and you're like, into Oman and Dubai, and you're like, why? It's 120 degrees. They're the construction workers, they're the hotel workers, and they're basically trapped there right now because of the COVID-19. They can't get out and they can't work. So imagine sitting in storage container housing in 120 degree weather.
We're talking about hot spots too. We were saying down here in Yemen and Saudi Arabia, the Saudi Arabians are afraid that the Yemeni groups are going to take over their oil fields, and so there's been like a civil war, but then also Saudi Arabia's been cracking down on them. Let's see.
And because they're Sunni and there's a Shia population here. Okay. So it's just easy to blame someone else when they're different.
Yeah. And then Mr. Wright was telling you guys about Israel. You could get a Palestine question versus Israel kind of question. That would be another political hotspot. Syria, definitely a big political hotspot. And they've actually received a lot of backing from Russia, and the United States is largely, we've removed ourselves from that conflict. We've talked about Myanmar. Other hotspots.
Let's talk about the proxy war. Okay, so you've got Sunni Arabs want to control the region, all right? Shia Persians are, they're freaking out about that, so they're bristling. So they'll back Hezbollah, groups in Lebanon and Yemen to fight the Arabs. And then money trickles to Al-Qaeda and ISIS from people in Saudi Arabia. All right, so you have the proxy war going on over who's going to control the region.
One other thought I had was just, Ukraine here. That's been a very tense relationship between Russia and Ukraine. Ukraine has a lot of resources. You can see they're right here on the Black Sea, and there's a lot of gas pipelines that go underneath Ukraine, and so Russia wants to reclaim them.
This is cool. Your German ancestors, if you're German in Lodi, came from here. They had moved over from Germany to farm, and then the Russian Tsar told them, you're in the army now, and they said, and they came to the Dakotas. Oh yeah. Okay. All right, yeah, this was the wheat belt. Okay?
We move on?
Yeah.
Okay.